Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the ServiceMonster podcast. We are now live, unless you're watching this later on YouTube. We'll dive into some SMUG posts. We've got an entrejoe skit we'll do for you. But we've got a really great topic. Covers a wide range of things. Adam, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so the main topic we're going to talk about this week is opportunity costs, what they mean, how to kind of, think about the ones that are less obvious and how it can affect your business, especially when you're kind of starting out and really understanding some of those basic kind of economic principles that maybe aren't so obvious sometimes. So is there anything you kind of want to touch on that before I jump in?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
All right.
There's a lot of ways we can look at this, right? You can look at it in terms of cost. You can look at it in terms of time. You can look at what you've lost, but you can also lose time going after something you think you're going to gain. So there's a whole bunch of ways that we can approach this, even talking about the opportunity of the sale. So, but I'm happy to go with your guys' bullet points and just kind of riff on those.
Yeah. So there's really two main types of opportunity costs. And the first one's a pretty, it's much easier to kind of understand just from the get-go, right? It's what they call explicit costs or out-of-pocket costs. So, if you have to buy something, like we just bought a new printer for FMS. So we spent that money that now cannot be used for other things, right? So it's an opportunity cost. We went this way, so we don't necessarily have the option to go over here. So that one's kind of obvious. The other type is what's called an implicit cost, where you're utilizing resources that can be used for other purposes that aren't necessarily a direct kind of dollar cost. They're usually hidden. They're typically intangible. And the biggest one, like Joe mentioned, is time. Time, labor, things like that. And so if we go back to the equipment kind of analogy, like let's say that the printer broke. And, the explicit cost would be the money that you would spend to repair the printer, right? So that money is now gone. You can't use it on something else. The implicit cost would be the entire time that printer is down, we wouldn't be printing, right? And so you're looking at that time that goes on and all the cards that could have been printed that now aren't. So someone might have to stay late, might have to work overtime, might have a delay, things of that nature that you kind of have to weigh. So that's kind of the basic breakdown between them. And it's also important to note that this doesn't include what's called a sunk cost, hence the term sunk, because opportunity costs are constantly kind of looking at present and future action, whereas a sunk cost, you've spent it. Like if you bought land, if you bought whatever, that sunk cost is there, and it's not going to change necessarily based on your actions. So this is kind of an important thing to remember. And the reason that I kind of wanted to talk about this now that we've kind of gone through the overview, Joe, is because this is something I do pretty much on a daily basis, right? Like trying to figure out where we want the software development to go. It's a big reason why software development moved to what's called agile versus, the more stereotypical waterfall method that used to kind of where you'd launch a large project and you would spend 6 months building that. And then by the time you came out, it's an entirely different thing. So that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up, because it's something that, like I said, that I think about all the time and that a lot of people kind of get in trouble if they're not thinking about this, because the biggest thing is time. If you devote your time all in one basket, so to speak, and there's other areas that are growth opportunities for you that you're not finding, then it's going to hinder your growth. And so that's kind of, I think, where I really wanted to kind of focus on. And I have a good example for us internally, Joe, but maybe if you have something that kind of you and Eric and some of the others found when you were growing ServiceMonster or other examples, you felt like this is kind of an important note.
I mean, I'd rather talk about maybe the opportunity costs that service providers get in trouble with a little bit.
Sure.
Because you see, I'll talk about the less obvious one, redundancy. So you have a truck mount, or you've got a porty, or you've got your pressure washing gear. And if you're a single owner operator and that's all the gear you have, that's a single point of failure. So your opportunity cost there theoretically could be, if that unit goes down, not only are you missing the time, and you're missing the ability to service the clients you've got on the schedule that day or for the length of time that equipment is no longer operational. But you're also missing out on making an awesome impression. There's a cost associated with that. It could be in repeat business and referrals. Sometimes if you got a little cash and as you grow, having a unit on the back burner, as it were, is a good idea, especially winter when things kind of go crazy, things freeze and break a lot easier. An alternative to that, of course, would be a really good mechanic or a distributor that you work with that can get you up and running quickly, but you're still going to be missing time there. So then your equation comes into how much does it cost me to have two of these things and put one on the shelf or one in the garage until they're needed. And then when that happens, you can send the one unit off to be fixed, jump in the other unit and continue on your day. Most people don't have the capital to be able to do that. In all honesty, Phil, my schedule was not redundant in all of its systems until just a couple of weeks ago. And so we had times when we went down for a couple of days, and that takes cards and they get delayed. But now we've solved that issue and we're fully redundant. We're talking, $10,000, $20,000 units as far as, these machines that we're getting. So it took us a while to really jump into that and be redundant. The other thing that I see, which is much more common, is the seduction of a business owner once they start to figure things out. Because once you get in a mindset of, oh, I've got marketing and sales, I got my website, my tech, we can do the job, like things are running, and you get a little bit of success. And then all of a sudden you start seeing opportunities everywhere. I mean, everywhere. And so, you start selling essential oils or, some stock on the side, or, maybe you want to become an influencer or something, and you start doing a lot of content, video and blogging and, whatever. Man, that is a huge opportunity cost in the fact that you're taking time away from your core competency. Sometimes it makes sense if you can add a new service to your existing client base. That makes a lot of sense. But I just see too many single owner operators get a little bit of success. They hire one or two people, then they get distracted. They go after something else, and then neither of them work out well. They fail at the new endeavor, and the old endeavor just kind of spins and people get tired of it, and you lose credibility in your community. So those are two big areas that I caution often when it comes to opportunity costs.
Yeah, and that's actually a big reason why I mentioned the printer, because it's something that we just dealt with internally. Another big one that, again, this is related to us, but it can work on your guys' end as far as your websites go. We had the new help website launch a few months ago, and it was kind of it was a big lift, and we can thank Mary up over here for all the hard work that she did on that. But it's kind of that, we here at ServiceMonster, we value, you guys being able to call us on the support line and talk to a person. That's something that, we definitely have worked hard to kind of make sure that you guys have that ability. But on the flip side, a lot of the questions that come in are really kind of simple, basic questions. Where is it? How do I do it? What is it? And we kind of had to take some time on the onboarding side and really just kind of choose. It's like, hey, we can continue going down this path of everything is 100% one-on-one learning, or we can take the time to really beef up some of this self-help so that it's more of like a supplementary thing. And then we're still there to hold your hand when the going gets tough, but we're not devoting those constant extra resources, right? Because it's a big thing that we talked about, right, Joe? Even when I started in onboarding, is just getting the ability to scale. And it's kind of the same thing on your website, making sure that you're not, relying on an email coming through and you coming to find it, or they have to get someone on the phone, or so on and so forth. If you can get those leads, kind of the action rolling, right? You have that opportunity there versus the time investment to go through these other channels.
Yeah, I mean, focusing on automation, right, frees up opportunity in other areas. And so, obviously a good example would be automating that lead capture process on your website, which then goes to your CRM, which then notifies you and gets the ball rolling. But while your marketing was out there on Facebook and Google, and it's just working 24/7 for you, you can be doing other things, driving the business in the right direction or actually performing the work. And then when they trip and they come through and then they hit the website, then the website does its thing, right? And then hopefully as a funnel, some of those will fill out that lead form and then end up in your CRM and you get notified. And then again, we've talked about how quickly you need to act on these leads, but jumping on that very quickly, making contact, and then closing the deal. Now, there are some times when those opportunities take longer. You'll have to, approach them multiple times or hit them through multiple vectors. Commercial accounts being one is a good one. Or maybe you've got a VIP that you're really going after and you want to send emails, you want to send a direct mail, you want to do phone calls. One way you can handle that directly within ServiceMonster is through our opportunity pipeline. And so, Mary, why don't you kind of show us what that looks like inside ServiceMonster?
Totally, yeah. The opportunities are a great way of kind of visually tracking your process of going through a sale and setting up an estimate. So we can find them by going into leads on the left-hand side menu here and then selecting opportunities. So this is kind of our generic basic opportunity board set up here. So each of these different cards represent a client that we're working towards working with. And then each of these cards is assigned to a different step. So we have, for this example, open, initial contact, qualified, estimate, and negotiation. And right here, when you look at the card, you can see information you've entered in, such as your estimated value for this work, a due date for it, when's the last point of contact for you with that. You can decide if we've won or lost this, how many days it's been in the stage. You can assign a probability to it, so how likely you think it is that you'll win or lose that, as well as what type of work you're going to be doing with them. And they're really simple to set up. All that you have to do is click on this plus opportunity, and here you can start building your card. Basically, the only required information for you to choose is to pick an account that you're going to be working with, and you can make a new account right from here as well by simply clicking on the plus account button right there. But we can just grab one of my basic ones. You can give it a name, choose a type for it, as well as, again, assign that value and probability and due date. Another handy thing with this is you can also give it a description and a next step. So right when you open up that opportunity and look at it, you can see what your goal is for your communication with them. Handy thing with this is it just makes it really easy for you to know how you're spending your time. And like we said, time is an implicit cost when it comes to your opportunity cost. So if you're spending a lot of time on someone and it's really not getting anywhere and you're keeping track of the conversations that you're having them, what sort of communication that you've had. Here I can show you, I can open one of these up simply by clicking on them. And this is just a really handy dashboard for keeping track of that communication if you end up setting up an order for them, what step they're at. And that can just really help you with your sales pipeline and making those decisions about, hey, is this someone that is going to be worth working with? Are they respectful of my time and the work that I want to do with them? Or is it time to move on and spend that time with someone else?
Yeah. Perfect. And those stages in that process too, moving them through on that board really gives you a visual indicator of where you're at in the sales pipeline. And like Mary said, it's a really good point. If you've got somebody that it looks like it's going to be $100 invoice, non-commercial account, or bare minimum, whatever your minimum charge is, do you really want to spend 12 hours courting the sale? Versus you've got a big commercial client that has monthly reoccurring of, let's say, $1,200. You might want to spend a little bit more time with that one. You might want to reach out a couple more times. You might want to send out direct mail. You might want to help use the interaction through SendJim and send them a brownie or something, right? Something really nice. So it's a big deal. Opportunity costs all around, but managing your sales pipeline and your opportunities with who you're communicating with and what value they're going to bring to the company. It's kind of dehumanizing in a way to try to equate dollars to people, but we are running businesses, and we don't have infinite resources. People harp, especially nowadays, harping on capitalism a little bit. And I'll be the first one to say we need to rethink it. Sure, infinite resources aren't infinite. But at the same time, you have value. The expertise you have has value. The equipment that you have has value. The time you've put into your business has value. All of that upfront cost. It's like that old analogy, hiring the plumber who shows up and looks at the water heater, takes out his hammer and whacks a certain place, and then everything starts working again, and then hands you a $150 bill. Like, all you did was hit the water cooler with the hammer. And the response is, well, that will only cost $5. The other $145 is for my expertise, knowing where to hit on the water cooler. Otherwise, you could have done it yourself and not called me. And so we're not necessarily trying to equate dollars to people, but we're making best use of your time as a professional and an expert, and making sure that you're able to grow a thriving business. So all kinds of ways you can really link opportunity, the time that you take, the resources that you give. And here's another one that's kind of fun. Business owners will be very guarded of their time. I know I am. It's one of my character flaws. If I feel like someone else is wasting my time, I get mad. If I have to repeat myself, I get mad. That's like my cognitive dissonance just goes off like crazy. But I can waste my own time and not be mad at myself. You know what I mean? You'd be like, you're wasting my time. I got to get back to work. 10 minutes after I'm back to work, I'm surfing Facebook or doing something that isn't necessarily the best use of my time. So monitoring that, monitoring your own opportunity loss for the amount of time that you're not taking via lack of discipline is a thing too. So, Adam, what else did you have on that list?
I'm actually really sometimes, Joe, I feel like we're just
tuned in.
Yeah. This was a perfect transition to kind of what this doesn't always apply to business. There's an opportunity cost, health, stress levels. If you have a family to worry about, these are all things. I mean, Joe has had many conversations about when you're an entrepreneur, you're on 24/7. And so there's always kind of that, like, I won't say necessarily fear, but that idea that like every hour I have available needs to be put into the business. And
chased by the lion, constantly chased by the lion. If we stop, we die.
Exactly. Yep. But there are other things to kind of keep in mind. So sometimes taking that 10 minutes to surf Facebook or do something, maybe there's a book that you're just really into, you want to spend, 20, 30 minutes, whether it's in kind of education-based read or something you just want to do to enjoy. Like sometimes that is actually more important because you need to make sure that your health, your well-being and whatnot are as high as they can be, because that's going to make you a better business owner in the long run. And so there's opportunity costs like in everything, right? Like your health, education, work. Like sometimes you might be better off going to something like, I don't know, the Symposium that we have coming up.
December 10th, 11th, and 12th.
To learn from to learn from some experts versus maybe kind of just going out and putting on that hustle, right, for those extra days, because you might gain more in the long run learning some of these trade secrets and things like that. Getting certified for certain events, rug dyeing maybe, or rug repair, carpet repair, kind of things like that maybe aren't in your skill set right now that you could go get trained and add and things of that nature. So there's always going to be that kind of pull in every way. I mean, it's just how life is, right? Everything's a trade-off. And I think kind of the closing thing that I would take is that doesn't mean you have to get stuck or frozen on that fear of like, well, what if this is the wrong choice? And so on here, like just go through be as educated as you can on the process, get as much data as you can on the process, and then kind of just work it in the now. Like focus on the now. Being frozen is not going to help you anyway. Just know that there is that future cost out there, so that you're just keeping that in mind when you do make these decisions.
A lot of times it just comes down to discipline too, right? And something may pop up in assessing an opportunity. Business owners have a tendency to say yes a lot. And there's a concept protecting your no, right? Protecting your time by saying, no, that sounds like it might be good, but I really just want to focus on what I've got going on here. Here's one internally before we move on. super agents. Sorry to open old wounds for those of you who were not happy with the fact that we shut down that amazing program. We were making 40 grand a month off that program. And Eric and I were just like, meh, you got to shut it down. The opportunity costs related to HR that we had to deal with on a regular basis, related to our clients, because we really wanted to give them an amazing product that really felt like we were their back office. That cost us more than what we were able to put into the product itself. And so as a result of working super agents, we actually lost opportunity to build ServiceMonster and make that better. So you got to question yourself on a regular basis and be willing to move and move off of a decision that you've made to go do something else. So it all comes down to discipline. It all comes down to introspection. What looks good. Now, if you have just an amazing opportunity that pops up that'll be really hard to pass up, obviously do some introspection. Don't say yes immediately. Look at what you need to do and then execute, or protect your time and say, no, I've got this thing that I'm working over here. So Michael, you have anything to add? You've been quiet the whole time.
No, I mean, you guys covered a lot of it. I think, it's, I don't know what else I can say. You guys just covered it all. It was so good. There was a few times I wanted to jump in, but you guys had such a good flow going. But I mean, I think, just relating it to, any job, obviously the work that we do is different than a service provider out there in the field. But it's like something I basically, I kind of approach this on a daily basis, like every morning of like, okay, what do I need to get done today? And like, kind of rank things, sometimes there's things that are more important than others. But it's kind of just, for me, like you said, Joe, it's a discipline, which I really resonated with that of, it really has become like a daily focus of mine, weighing the opportunity cost of everything that I'm doing, especially during my work time. Like, what's my priority? What's going to give the most value to the company? What's going to be the most efficient use of my time? So, definitely kind of just making that an everyday part of your life is can be really effective in just being a more efficient, not just worker, but person, honestly.
I think something too that can help service providers is what you and Joe go through on the marketing front. If you guys, I don't know how many times we've harped on here about track your lead sources, right? Track what marketing is actually working, because there's massive opportunity costs of going down the wrong kind of path with marketing. So maybe chat about that.
Well, yeah, it's a tricky one because there's a lot of different ways to get leads. There's buying leads, which, Joe, you've talked about that a lot, and kind of your disdain for that source, which is fine. I've seen a lot of people, have horror stories about using services where they're buying leads. For some, it works. So that's a really big one. Do you want to touch on that, or is that?
Oh, going off the rails a little bit. I
don't want to go off the rails, but it's a relevant one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, I think marketing itself is interesting because you have this concept of loft, which we've talked about. So while certain things may not necessarily directly track to performance, they can indirectly track how you get leads. Mm-hmm. So do you put too much money into one thing versus another? And then what could you have done with that cash? Because in this case, we're really talking about a cash. Unless content creation for those advertisements is time consuming. Back before media and volatile content, even ServiceMonster, we would spend $3 to $10 grand on a single video. And then we push that video, and it would take, 90 days. You'd sit down with the team and you'd come up with a script, and you'd really massage it, and then you'd get to work, and then you'd have reviews. You do some still framing, you put it all together, you do some video shoots, you go through the editing process, you get some still frames, wireframes, you're going back and forth, and then 90 days later, maybe you've got something you paid a decent amount of money for, and then you launch it. Now, Michael's like, I need a new ad. I'm like, okay, I got you. And 20 minutes later, I send him a selfie video. Right? Because I just hit record on my phone and I give the message that I want to communicate. like we have for the Symposium, and then we're off and running. And in terms of volatile content, if I spend all that time on production, then I'm missing 60 days of opportunities where I could just be creating daily content that's volatile anyways. That, $5,000 60-day video will have the same impact as a well-executed message. And so, weighing all that out and moving with the changes, that's the name of the game. So constant analysis of where you're spending your time and cash and resources.
Yep.
I think that's a good way to end it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
So for you current ServiceMonster users, let's jump into some ServiceMonster news. On the mobile front, I hope everyone's enjoying some of the tablet changes that we made. You guys can flip it horizontally, right, and get that screen rotation. I know some of you guys are super excited about that. So, but we have another release that's probably, man, I don't want to. We'll say a couple of weeks so I don't get in trouble. But 1.3.7 is, and that number might change, as I mentioned kind of last time we were doing a mobile release, but we're making some changes to the trial experience. So I know that doesn't necessarily resonate with a lot of current users, but there's a bunch of kind of just common use cases that we're finding that we really want to make sure that when someone comes in on the mobile app first, they understand, what they're doing, user kind of information. And if you guys have technicians or agents or something like that logging into the mobile app for the first time, that it's much more clear that you're not signing up for a new account, right? That we're making sure that it's very easy for them to make sure they go to their admin, where you guys, the owners, and be like, hey, what's my login information, and getting that in there. So we're really smoothing that process out. On desktop, your ears might have perked up when I said agent. On desktop, we've got 654. It's roughly a week or so, plus or minus a day or so. And the big thing that we're bringing is the agent and agent limited roles or security roles are coming into ServiceMonster 6. I know you guys have been banging down the door for both me and Joe on this for a while. And we're definitely excited to have that ready for you guys. And there's also some interesting kind of things on the super technician role that we might be rolling out too that I'll talk about next podcast. So both of those are exciting. And there's some really big things coming up right before the Symposium. But we'll just lay that little teaser out there, and then we'll get more in depth when we get closer. So with that, speaking of Symposium, Michael, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so Symposium, hopefully you guys have heard about it by now. We talk about it every podcast, post about it, email about it constantly. 25% off your ticket until November 15th. So that's just 10 more days to get that 25% off discount. ServiceMonster.net/symposium. Links all over the place for that. So I kind of want to just briefly touch on 5 of the speakers that we're going to be having at the event this year. There's a ton, like we said, we have 24 speakers and panelists, I think, maybe even more potentially on some of the panels. There's been a ton of interest from people all over the cleaning industry in terms of wanting to be a part of it and offer value. So one of the first ones we can touch on is Josh Latimer, who is the founder of SendGym and Automate Grow Sell. I know, Joe, you've been on his podcast. He's been on yours. You guys have talked a ton throughout the years. He's going to be talking about the 3 things you must have to get unstuck and earn the money you know you deserve. So a little more I think it has a little more of a personal focus in terms of being a business owner and how you're managing your finances and all that stuff. So is there anything you want to say about Josh?
Yeah, I mean, Josh is great. Him and I have been friends now, I would say going on 3 or 4 years. And when we first connected, I knew he's just got a different way, and so I invited him to co-speak with me on a speech I was doing for Connections when way back when all this stuff was live, and we talked about KPIs. I knew that for the hour I was going to rattle on about data, I was going to put everybody to sleep. Not everybody's as excited about analytics as I am. And so I used Josh as a speed bump to kind of tie that data back into the real world, because he has ran several service businesses. And now I think he's kind of strictly doing the coaching and speaking thing. So, he's been doing that for a while, and he knows what he's talking about. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, the second one is Mark Sager from Sager Steam Clean. He's a third generation cleaner. He is going to be speaking on passing the torch and basically talking about an exit plan, which is something that I remember you had an entrejoe video back in the day about an exit plan, Joe. I think it was one of your last or Ask ServiceMonster videos something. Yeah. And it's and that was a really popular one. And so I'm really interested to hear what Mark will have to say about kind of how to approach leaving your business, not just shutting it down, but passing it on, creating a business that is desirable to someone who would, either a family member you want to pass it down to, or even sell it off. So what's your story with Mark there?
Well, Mark he's been around forever. I've been in the industry for 17 years. Even before that, though, I've got family in the industry. And Mark has just been a fixture forever. I think the peers of the industry picked him up because he does such a great job on YouTube content for his company. And this isn't turning the camera around to talk to other carpet cleaners. He's actually built quite a following in his local community with the videos that they do on YouTube. So if you haven't seen that, you might want to go check that out. It may be apropos for him to be doing passing the torch, because he's been laid up after knee surgery. So we wish him a speedy recovery and look forward to what he has to say at the symposium.
Yep. And Mason Tomeno from the founder of Mason's Network, also over 30 years of experience in the cleaning industry. He's going to be talking about relationships, the importance of building lasting relationships and how that helps you increase sales. So what's the history with Mason here, Joe?
So Mason's been all over the place, right? He worked for HydroMaster. Before that, it was John Don. He's done distributor, within the shop itself. My favorite story about Mason, besides the fact that the guy is just a beast when it comes to networking, his whole claim to fame is networking. And so for a long while, Mason, all by himself, held the number 2 position in social dominance within the carpet cleaning industry. 3 guesses as who is number 1. ServiceMonster, baby, if you had any doubts. John Don took over part of what he was doing, but he still maintains control over his stuff, right? Because he helped Strategies for Success get that group going with Steve Toburian and Bill Eden. Both will be at the symposium, by the way. We'll talk about them later. Yeah. And so, Mason's just a great guy and just a beast of a salesperson. There are whole divisions that track how many truck mounts are sold. And Mason typically outperforms, as an individual, he outperforms entire companies. I remember hearing that, the average sale of carpet cleaning equipment, truck mounts within a given shop, maybe 20 or 30 in a year. And he typically puts up, at least when he was doing it, was putting up 60, 70 truck mount sales a year. I mean, just an absolute monster. But it all came down to how nice he is, how much he networks, how much he communicates and cares. And now Becky's running around too, doing her thing. He's doing some coaching now as well as he started his own cleaning business after he left HydroMaster. So he's got a lot of stuff going on, and I look forward to seeing him there.
Yeah. The next guy, I'm probably going to say his name wrong, even though I looked at it before. Sean Bissayon. I looked it up. It's so hard to remember. He is an industry cleaning specialist, also with 30 years of experience. Got a lot of guys with just years of experience here. He's going to be taking a different approach. So a lot of these speakers are taking a more general high-level business approach or personal approach as a business owner, but he's actually talking about from floors to fabrics and beyond. So I believe his lecture is going to be a little more focused on practical cleaning tips and kind of just how you can expand your service offering beyond kind of what we talked about a lot before, with just pivoting your business and stuff like that. So what's the history here with Sean?
Sean's, again, been in the industry for as long as he's been alive, pretty much. He is a beast when it comes to the technical aspects of cleaning. He's a IICRC master, teaches classes, walks around with the lab coat and the goggles on a regular basis, which reminds me, just real quick, not jumping off of Sean, but back to Mark. I forgot to mention that Mark also started creating chemicals, right? Seeger juice, as it were. And he's got a lot of great chemicals on the line. And I'm sure Sean could show you how to use them properly. Because as long as he has the pH balance and what the surfactant power is essentially, then he's going to know it. So Sean's just very well educated. He does a really good job at educating others and kind of getting them into the idea of, what are the technical aspects of what we do? So again, just another powerhouse. He's been in the industry a long time and a wealth of knowledge.
He's also been on the cleaning podcast. So if you guys haven't listened to that, make sure you guys go take a listen.
The very first episode, correct? I
don't remember.
Wasn't he the guest? I think it was the guest on the very first one. Yeah,
maybe
the cleaning podcast.
I really got to fire that back up, but man, I've just been so busy.
Yeah. That's okay. Jim Pearson also will be speaking. He's a certified mechanical hygienist and president and CEO of Mold Inspection Services. Also the co-owner and founder of AmeriClean, which is a full-service disaster restoration company. So he's clearly a very busy guy.
And you even touch on the fact that he's, I don't know if he's on the board anymore, but he was on the board of the IICRC and the IICRCA. Likes to give back to the community. He's written several books. Like, Jim's amazing and one of the older guard, as it were. And he just a wealth of knowledge there as well.
Yep. Yeah, he's going to be speaking on kind of taking your company into the future. I think he's going to be sharing some specific stuff with how his company has used ServiceMonster to grow. And obviously some of this stuff can be applied to any CRM, but the focus, it's the ServiceMonster Cleaning Symposium. Of course.
Another thing about Jim that I find fascinating is that, here I am saying, hey, he's an old guy. And then he's doing forward thinking, right? He's doing business in the future. He's the only old guy I would trust that to. Truth. Like his ability to see where social media should have played a role with the association back in, I want to say, when I was on the board in like 2012, 2013, somewhere in that time frame. And he just was on it. He knew how important and impactful it was going to be. And so that was always impressed me because nobody else, me and Jeremy Reitz were the only two people on the board of directors there who were Gen X. Everybody else were old boomers by a couple generations and, not generations, couple decades. And Jim was right there with us. He knew what was up. So I can't wait to hear what he says about the future.
And he uses the term boomers with love. I promise.
Send the hate mail to
Adam's email, right? Yeah.
Oh, no.
Hey, they know where to find me on Facebook.
Exactly.
Yep. That's all I got for the symposium. So I'll put a link. You guys will see it everywhere. Post about it all the time. Get a ticket, 25% off if you haven't already.
Very good. Can't wait to see you guys there.
Yeah, just a reminder, each podcast as we kind of move towards the symposium is going to have this breakdown of the speakers. So you guys can go back, you can listen, you can see everyone who's going to be here. And we're jam-packed with value. So I hope you guys see that, and we hope to see you guys there. Moving on, entrejoe. And this one was really interesting because I had just come up with the idea to talk about opportunity cost on Monday. And like 2 hours later, I saw this post and I was like, well, that's a done deal because these tie very similarly together. So without further ado, take anything of value and make it free and you immediately reduce its value to almost zero. This has nothing to do with cost or changes to the properties of the service. If the receiving party has no skin in the game, they will hold little value to what they are receiving. The most apparent example is time. When people give away their time, other people will often take it with little regard to the value it has to you. Hashtag entrejoe. So let's chat about that, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, the Symposium is a good example. If we would have just sold tickets for free, a bunch of people would have jumped on and very few people would have showed up. It's just the way it is. People don't value things until they get a little skin in the game. So, yes, we want to make sure we cover our costs for the Symposium, but 50% is going to be dedicated and donated to a heart foundation. Children's Heart Foundation. The remaining 50%, it's like 51.49, but it takes too long to explain that. The remaining 49% goes in a lockbox so we can make next year's show even better. So we're not looking to make any cash. I just simply want ServiceMonster to have a booth at an amazing show. And at a time when we're locked down and the associations are failing us on providing us with a good show, ServiceMonster just decided to do it. So yeah, we thought about how are we going to do tickets? Are we going to give them away? Are we going to sell them? And I'm pretty sure most people will show up, at least for a good portion of the Symposium, if they have to throw 50 or 70 bucks at it. It's just that little bit that makes you go, yeah, this is important to me. And then it communicates to us that it's important to you, which means that, we put that effort into the show. So, but this comes at everything. If you start doing free things for people, they will expect it. You look at how Groupon works. You go to Groupon, you do that first job, you're doing a 50% off your discount. You make no money on the damn deal, thinking that maybe you'll land some repeat clients. And of course, when you call them back up or you send them something that says, hey, time to re-up, they want the same deal they had last time. Well, you're going to charge me twice as much as last time. And so, people need to know the value of things. And a lot of times that just comes down to dollars, because that's what we do in this society. We trade hours for dollars, and then we have these dollars that we then go spend. What we're really spending is our time. And so if you don't spend that time, then you don't think there's really any value to it. So it's important. So when you're looking at pricing your stuff, make sure that you're just not undercutting to try to get the deal done. You got to give yourself margins so that you can grow your business and then sell the value of what you provide.
Yeah, I always kind of harken back to a really common example is pizza. How many of you guys order pizza at full price? Probably none of you. Right? There's always a coupon. There's always a deal. You're calling up like, give me like the $8 deal. And these guys have gotten to a point, all the national brands and all the local places for the most part, unless they're a really upscale restaurant, they're all having to compete with that, right? Everyone's competing against, like, they're driving themselves down to the bottom. And I think that's Joe's thing, is like, know that your pizza is worth the extra money, because you guys are going to go through that. You have the years of expertise. You have the better chemicals. You have the better equipment, whatever it might be. You guys have value. Your services, your knowledge has value, and your time has value. So that's really kind of all that needs to be said there.
Good.
Last but certainly not least, we have SMUG. We have some fun posts this week. The first one was from Robin, kind of going into the API game, working with Zapier, working with some web development shops, and just asked kind of about, hey, does anyone have a way to, pull data out of ServiceMonster into Google Sheets? And like, in their own words, talking about, hey, I understand SQL, I understand, how to do basic queries in Excel and things like that, but I don't know how to get the data into the Excel so that I can utilize it. Because basically what they're trying to do is make some custom, I believe, goals and dashboards and things that they're on the sales front for their technicians. And there was some nice community feedback, and we're always going to shine a light on these posts, because we love when you guys kind of give back to each other and you kind of help kind of cultivate some of these ideas, right? There was one talking about Fiverr, which is, if you guys don't know, Fiverr is kind of a way to connect people with various skill sets. Some of it can be a little shady, so be very careful about where you're spending money there. But there was someone that this other gentleman, Robert, had worked with that did a really good job, which is some basic kind of API work. So there was that. And I mentioned that Zapier does connect with Google Sheets. So depending on the data that you're pulling out, because not everything can be pulled out via Zapier, a lot can, but not everything necessarily. But depending on what you're pulling out, you can utilize that with Google Sheets. It's one of Zapier's most common integrations, actually. So,
and our grids too, and our reports, they can all be spit out as Excel spreadsheets.
Correct. Yep.
So just keep that in mind as well.
And the really cool thing about the reports is you can customize them. So you can, it's basically you guys are creating custom reports through our grids. So,
yep.
The next post came in from Alan. We love Alan and Audrey both, asking about being able to upload a PDF to work orders via the Images tab. And Brenda came in and kind of just said, "Hey, images and documents are actually separated. You can upload a PDF. It's the Documents tab," and went through the process of going through that. And I wanted to shine a light on just a couple of quick things here. One is that SMUG is not really a support channel. Joe and I have mentioned this numerous times. As much as Joe and I try to keep eyes on it, if you guys need support, please contact support. We've got phone, we've got email. Reach out to them and they'll answer these questions for you guys ASAP. But the other thing is that Brenda, who's one of our support reps, she also kind of helps go through here, and she's the one who's typically replying here outside of myself and Joe. And we just kind of wanted to kind of point out that fact that, hey, Brenda does an amazing job, first and foremost. We love her to death. I'm sure if any of you guys have contacted her through the support channels, you know how great she's at her job. But we just kind of want to give support a pat on the back, so to speak, and just remind that you can pick up the phone, you can call someone, and they're going to answer. You don't have to send an email and have it wait for 2 days before you get a response on something, right? You don't have to sit to a chat bot and go through a bunch of stuff. Just like press 1, please, a real person, please, just a real person, right? You don't have to go through those steps for us. So,
yeah, I mean, just touching on your points, the first one is SMUG is not a support channel as you would understand it. So if you were having a problem with the product and you want help, so SMUG is the worst way to do it. And I will, just because of my nature, not respond for a bit. I really want you to use the email and phone. We are one of the only CRM companies on the planet that offers direct phone support. And a lot of our clients have us on speed dial ahead of their wives. And so, it's important to us. When we built this company, the term software as a service didn't exist. We were one of the very first companies to build the model. And a lot of my experience came from running call centers. And so that level of customer support was a big deal. The software as a service, the service portion of that means as much to us as the software side does. Because without the support, then, you guys are left to your own devices. It's another reason why we push all this content out. It's because the fabric of our company is built on that, providing value and communication and making sure you guys get what you need when you need it. So, take a minute to highlight that, pat ourselves on the back and say, as one of the only CRMs that has full-fledged 10 hour phone support, take advantage of that. When you need help, call us. They love Jamie, Sam, Chachi, Brenda, like all those guys, Jamie, they all, and now Kevin, who's now running the sales and support department. And we'll be adding some more team members here soon, but these guys are amazing at their jobs and they can answer your questions usually pretty quickly. And if not, then they know who to talk to and who to bug in order to get that stuff done. So love our support team.
Absolutely. And I just want to take a quick note to the SaaS model, the software as a service model that Joe was just talking about, has kind of blown up across software in general. And I think it's really important to all of you guys and gals to really pay attention to the ones that are actually providing you a service and the ones that just transferred their old exact same model to this new monthly or annual subscription. You don't really get anything out of it. It's just a way for them to squeeze out extra revenue. So
yeah, and look at the VCs, they have no interest in building a big company with lots of people that help people. Any dollar they want to put into it is about automation. What can we do to scale? What can we do to talk to these people as little as possible? Right? Have you ever picked up the phone and called Facebook? Have you ever picked up the phone and called Google? I mean, there's some advertising help you can get, but you know the drill. It's like they're impossible to reach on purpose because they don't want one-on-one help, because it doesn't scale well when you deal with tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of people. CRM companies don't do that. Don't let them fool you. They've got a couple thousand clients, right? So, the best of us may have up to 10,000 clients and users. So it's totally manageable, but they don't want it cutting into their bottom line. And I'm willing to sacrifice that profit to make sure you guys get the support that you need when you need it. So,
last but not least, we have a post from someone who I love to death. First off, Pete, fantastic last name. I won't say it over the broadcast here, but love your last name. And worked with him very heavily in the onboarding process. Absolutely amazing person. And he posted that we don't see this all that often these days in SMUG. He posted a question that was about cleaning outdoor carpets. He's a pressure washer. And so typically, he's dealing with probably not dealing with the carpet side of things, right? And so just kind of asking the carpet cleaners if they have experience with outdoor carpet with heavy moss growth. And a bunch of people jumped in. Corey, Toby, Dan, all of you guys, I'll give you guys shout outs. Thanks you so much for kind of jumping in. There was some great advice, great discussion that kind of went down. And we absolutely love to see that, like I said in the first post. And really hope you guys kind of continue that, helping each other out. That's really part of what SMUG is all about, right? Small business owners helping each other to become massively successful. So,
ourselves included. Yep.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And with that, that's all I got for you, Joe. There's actually one quick thing that I'll note. We have a special episode next podcast.
It's the 50th.
Episode number 50.
Yeah. Our 50th podcast episode. Yeah, I don't even know how many videos were on YouTube, though. But we're going to do just some fun top 10 reasons why you may not be using ServiceMonster. At least that beginning of that segment may not be relevant to people who are actually using ServiceMonster, but we'll try to bring some value there as well, in addition to updates and SMUG posts and so forth. So, but yeah, our second live stream. We're practicing this muscle so that when we do the Symposium main stage events, we've got a really good process down. And from a business perspective, this is saving us a huge amount of time in editing, because usually editing video, the formula is typically 1 hour per minute is how much time you're going to spend creating, producing, and editing for each minute of finished product that you have. With a live stream like this, Justin might have to spend a couple hours of pre-production, a couple hours of post-production, and we're done. And so then we can go concentrate on other things. So again, for us, we're continually improving, looking at ways to improve not just the product, not just our customer support, but also the value that we're delivering to you. So we thank you so much for your attention and your communication, your support, your engagement, your likes, your follows, your comments. They all go to help really make this worth doing. So we really appreciate you. And we look forward to seeing you at the Symposium. Until next time.